My name is Julie Steinbacher, and some of you already know me. I am the founding partner of Steinbacher, Goodall, and Yurchak. And we also have on with us today, Jenna Franks, who's also a partner at our firm. And both of us, both Jenna and I, have a special focus on special needs planning. And we're going to talk a little bit today about special needs planning. I'm just going to go over a little bit of some changes, things I think people need to know. I'm not going to talk that long, but I'm going to introduce Jim Lange and have him talk about really what is his specialty. Jim and I were introduced to each other through a mutual friend, and it was very exciting to interact with somebody of his caliber, really so close to us, just from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And so Jim and I have started working together to further accentuate what we both can offer to our clients, particularly in this arena. Today, we're going to talk a lot about IRAs and some high-end planning, and I'm very excited for this topic. So for those of you who don't know who we are, what we do at our law firm, we do have a special focus on special needs planning and guardianships. And the reality of it is that we try to bring the social work into the law. And so what that means is that when people come to our office, we don't just do wills, powers of attorneys, and a special needs trust. We talk about the situation. What is the disability that we're dealing with? What's the realities of the need for care? What are the conversations we have to have with family and friends? And so we try to really put together a really good transition piece for that child who has some sort of a disability. New is, the ABLE accounts. That's something actually Amos Goodall, my partner, really legislatively really advocated for that. And the reality of that is that for smaller amounts, people don't even have to use a trust. They can just use an ABLE account. For those of you who may have done your trusts a while ago, it is something we might want to review your trust to see if we should also allow the trustee of that trust to be able to set up an ABLE account, because they really work really well. The other thing that I feel like a lot of people don't know a lot about is in Pennsylvania, we do have MAUD, which is medical assistance for a worker with a disability. And for any of you who have children, or you yourself have some sort of a disability, understand we can get, we can get MAUD even if they go back to work, which is very exciting. At our office, we also do a lot of elder care navigation and Alzheimer's and dementia planning. And again, the point of that is really to make sure that people understand that we're not just about doing the power of attorney. We're also about how to use the power of attorney. What's the reality of the decisions that I'm making? How do I make those decisions? And so, there's obviously a whole list there. But I am one of the few people in the state of Pennsylvania that is an ACT Tech fellow. I'm very excited to be able to have achieved that. I also recently got my LLM in estate and elder law. Spent a lot of time at night looking at my computer, but really helpful. And so I've been lucky through the years to really enjoy what I do and to be able to bring a high level of service to our clients. When we think about this, just for everybody, we want to make sure that we have base foundational documents, and I'm sure many of you on here do. I just will always talk about base foundational documents because they need updated, they need looked at. Just my appointments today, many people did not have alternates. Or they had an old power of attorney and they really needed updated. And that's just somebody who can talk for you in the event that you're not able to. When we think about that child who has a disability, often people come to my office and they're worried about their own estate planning, and they have a child who has a disability. And one of the first things we have to talk about is, does that person have their own powers of attorneys? If they're competent and they're able to execute those documents, we need them to do that. If not, we have to go ahead and get a guardianship. So really important. The ABLE Act, it is a savings account for those who are disabled before the age of 26. Anybody can create an account, but they can only have one account. The nice thing about the ABLE Act is, sometimes when the government makes a program, it doesn't end up well. I would say, from my perspective, the ABLE Act was a good success. I would say that we are able to help families who get small amounts of money. We also have the ability with the ABLE account to be able to use the money for more things than what the trust typically allows us to. So the ABLE Act was a really good thing. It's free. We're able to set them up online. So again, if you've done your planning with us and I never talked to you about the ABLE account, it's something you might want to schedule a review appointment with our office and see if that's something that we should be adding to your planning. Of course, with all good things, there are limits. So they limit the amount of money that can be added to the account. Some of that, they also limit how much the account can have, and some of that has to do with the programs that those people who have a disability are receiving. But the most important thing about the ABLE account is that with our special needs trust, we are really limited to what we can pay out of that. And we're not, for some programs, depending on what type of benefit your child who has a disability has or your loved one, we may not be able to pay for housing expenses. With an ABLE account, we can. So we have some people who we've done planning for in the past, and they have just a special needs trust, and that becomes practically a problem when they pass away, and now we can't use this for housing, or else it will work against the person who has a disability's benefit, their SSI, for instance, if they get SSI. Now what we can do is take a small amount out of that trust, put it in an ABLE account, and through the ABLE account, we're allowed to pay the housing expenses. And so it's broadened what we're able to do, and that in itself is worthwhile. Now, I've talked about a special needs trust, and some of you may already be familiar with that because you have one, and some of you may not. It's really an idea that a special needs trust is really so that we can supplement whatever services or benefits the person's already receiving. So the idea is that if somebody gets an SSI benefit or a medical assistance benefit, that the government's acknowledging that that's not enough for people to live off of. And if we have the special needs trust, we can use that. Now, it's really important for people to understand you have to set it up before somebody passes away. I get calls all the time, and so does Jenna. Somebody's already passed away. They now are about to get an inheritance. And what can we do with it? Well, we can put it into a trust, a special needs trust, but it's going to have a payback provision to the state of Pennsylvania. If prior to that person dying, they had set up a special needs trust, it doesn't have to have a payback to the state of Pennsylvania. So really important if you're thinking about giving any money to a child or a loved one who has some sort of a disability and they might be receiving some sort of a benefit, that we set that up prior to death, because it's a much better trust, much more versatile, and can go down the generations rather than the state being able to come in and recouping some of the costs. So, which should people do? I think from my perspective, more often we do both. We do have some situations where we're thinking, is an ABLE account enough so we don't have to do the trust? And I think that's good. But essentially, we want to think about what makes the best sense for that individual person. The only thing I would say to you is that the ABLE accounts, the best thing I can say about them is that the beneficiary and that's the person who has a disability, can directly access them. So sometimes it's difficult. We work with a special needs trust, and the person who has a disability is not allowed to be their own trustee. Yet their disability may have nothing to do with their mind or their ability to make good decisions. The law kind of assumes that. But when the ABLE account came through, they didn't make that assumption. So somebody who has a physical disability, but not intellectual, would not have to give up the right to make their own decisions, which is a wonderful part of the ABLE account. I talked a little bit about MAUD, and again, I'm going to talk a little bit about it because I think it's an underutilized resource. So I'll give you an example. My nephew has cystic fibrosis. He's had a lung transplant. he works as much as he possibly can. What the law used to be was that if he started working, he would lose his medical assistance. Well, that kept people from wanting to work. At this point in time, if somebody is working, they're able to get mod, and that allows them to keep that medical assistance. So in my nephew's situation, for instance, his medicines for his cystic fibrosis are about $10,000 a month. He has primary insurance, but he needs the medical assistance to pick up the end. And it's interesting, even minimal informal amounts of work would allow somebody to be eligible for mod. So it's been around a while, but it's something I wanted to highlight quickly for everybody to know. Also at our office, we do a document called the Summary of Our Wishes. So we sit down with you and talk about what's the reality if you passed away tomorrow. What would we need to know about that person who has a disability? And for sometimes that's an adult dependent child that's still living at home. What do we want to know about their medicines, their preferences? And so it's a relatively longer document. And what we do at our office is we help you start to fill it out and get that done for you. And that way, let's say that you have a child who has a disability and that child is going to have to seek housing someplace else if you pass away, and have to go into a facility or live with a relative or do some congregate housing that's more independent living, but still congregate housing. What should those people know in order for this to be an successful transition? So I think that's really, really important. And we started doing that at our office quite some time ago. Honestly, what happened was my brother, his live-in girlfriend passed away in a car accident. And all of a sudden I was caring for my nieces. And the one had a peanut allergy, very bad. And I was asking her sister, who was 5, for guidance. And I realized that we really need to know this, but like disabilities such as autism, what are the things that would really be difficult for that child to, or adult, wherever that falls, to go through? We would want to know just a guidebook. So I think that's really, really important. We also really try to talk about what is the reality of where somebody is going to live and what's going to be the cost of that. And so to make sure that we're able to deal with that. So I am going to just stop there. I talked fast. What I wanted everybody to know is that, special needs planning is something that we do at our office. We've done it for a very long time. It's extremely important to us. And it's extremely important for us to do it well from the perspective of being complete and including more of a social work side to that, which is what we did. Now, with Jim, one of the things that's been really helpful is having somebody who really understands some of the higher level IRA conversions, the new Secure Act and what's happening with that. And we've asked him on today to share with you all. And I know everybody on here is at a different level. Some of you are clients, some of you are financial advisors yourself, some of you are potential clients. But what we want to do is to be able to introduce this concept to you and know that there's a resource if it's something somebody really wanted to look into. So James is one of the few CPAs that I know. That is also an attorney and a financial advisor. And he has a 3-time best-selling author. So to say that I like what I do is probably an understatement. James really likes what he does. He's the president of 3 interrelated companies that provide financial services, really focusing on IRA and retirement plan owners. And that's, again, just so you know, we're going to really focus on that today. He does tax planning and a preparation CPA firm. He's a registered investment advisory firm that provides cutting-edge Roth IRA conversion strategies and money management. And he also has a law firm. He's nationally recognized IRA, 401k, Roth conversion expert. who helps affluent professionals build a tax-free dynasty wealth for their families. I really believe that Jim's advice on retirement estate planning is second to none, particularly in the Roth IRA area. And others agree with me because he's been featured on CNN, CBS, MSNBC, Wall Street Journal, Financial Planning Magazine, Clippingers, and hundreds of other sources. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jim. Now, I will tell you guys, we've had to have Jim cut down his PowerPoint a few times. He's very excited about this, and he has a lot to talk about. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jim to really enlighten us on these types of strategies, particularly in light of planning for a child who has special needs. Jim?
Thank you, Julie, and thank you, Kyle, for all the help getting this set up. So I was riding my bicycle in Johnstown, PA with a couple friends, and the trail took us to a darkened tunnel, and I didn't see a big pothole in front of me, and I went down hard, and I couldn't walk. I was rushed to the local hospital in Johnstown, and I got the bad news. Sorry, Jim, you have a broken hip, and you need an operation. The good news is we happen to have a surgeon on call who's in the hospital right now, and you can get the surgery done right now. And I asked the nurse, well, if I don't get the surgery right now, but if I, let's say, waited till tomorrow morning, would my condition get any worse? And she said, you'd have a very unpleasant evening, but it would be fine. And I thought about it. This is a very important operation. We're talking about putting a big metal rod down my leg that if something goes wrong, it could really have a significant impact on my health for the rest of my life. And I thought, you know, this is a general surgeon. I really want a specialist. And I found out that there was a hip surgeon in Pittsburgh that not only specialized in hips, but hip trauma. And I thought, that's really what I want to do. I want to see a specialist. So I arranged to take an ambulance to Pittsburgh. I did have an unpleasant night. But the next day in Pittsburgh, I did have the surgery from the specialist. And I put together a team. I had a nutritionist, I had an acupuncturist, I had a chiropractor, I had, what am I missing? Oh, physical therapist. And we all worked on let's say, healing my hip and my leg. And when I went in for a checkup, the surgeon said it was the fastest recovery he ever saw. So why do I start this story like that? Because sometimes if you have a specialty situation, you need a specialist. For those of you who have a child with a special need, like I do, I think you were very wise to seek out Julie and the members of her law firm because they are specialists. And that was really a terrific thing. So when, as the parent of a child with a disability, my wife and I, our biggest worry in our life, and I'm not going to say it's 100% over yet, but our biggest worry was what is going to happen to our daughter after we are both gone. And luckily, I do have expertise in Roth IRA conversions and in the Secure Act. And I came up with what I thought was a great solution for parents with a child with a disability. And I got very excited about it, but I wanted to surround myself with specialists myself. And the mutual friend that Julie had referred to said, hey, Jim, you really want to talk to Julie Steinbacher, and she could maybe be the legal person on this, let's say, report and this trying to reach as many parents with a child with a disability as we could. So I hopped on a Zoom call with Julie, and it was just me and her and my wife. And then after I was done with the call, I turned to my wife, Cindy, and I basically meant, Cindy, do you think that this would be a good person to partner with on the special report? And Cindy wasn't interested in that. She said, I want her as my attorney. Now think about this. My wife is, I love her dearly. She's on the frugal side. we have a very good law firm in Pittsburgh ourselves. We have some razor sharp attorneys, but they're not specialists. Cindy wanted Julie to help with our estate plan. We have since met with Julie, and she came up with a bunch of things that I didn't know about, that our estate attorneys didn't know about. So sometimes going to the right specialist is really important. So we're going to concentrate on, let's say, one of the main things that I have not seen either in practice or in the literature to provide for a child with a special need. And I know that not everybody here has a child with a special need. So I'm going to combine general Roth IRA concepts along with an emphasis on, well, what should you do if you have an IRA or retirement plan and you have a beneficiary, most likely a child with a special need or a disability like I do. And I'm going to try to spend time on issues that we can control. So many advisors, talk about the market, and they talk about inflation, and they talk about things that frankly they can't control. So I'm going to focus on strategies that we can control. So my premise is that a series of strategically planned Roth IRA conversions is often potentially the most important action plan you can take to protect yourself and your family from massive taxation. And if you have a child with a special need, it is even more important. I mean, let's say that you're on here and your kids are relatively healthy. Let's say you don't really do a great job with your estate planning or your Roth IRA planning, and you die, and maybe your kids are a couple $100,000 worse off than if you had optimized it, or even $1 million worse off. And let's say your kids were relatively healthy and they have jobs. It would have been great for them to have a couple $100,000 or $1 million more. But if your child has a special need and is not able to work and provide for themselves, and that child is a couple $100,000 or $1 million worse off because you didn't optimize your planning, that's pretty tragic. And often the difference between optimizing and, let's call it status quo, is a couple $100,000, or in my case, the difference for my daughter in today's dollars between us being proactive versus not being proactive. I'm not talking about a government benefit. I'm not talking about life insurance, is in my daughter's case, $1.9 million. So if you have a child with a disability, the long-term planning could easily be the difference between your child being broke and your child being fine. So here's one of the things that we all know, but I'll reiterate regarding IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, SEPs, all this type of money. What it has in common is that we have not yet paid tax on it. And unless we leave it to charity, somebody someday is going to pay tax. So that is one of the themes. And we should also understand that we are, I believe, in an era of rising tax rates. So even if we have a totally dysfunctional government, and let's say that they can't get it together to pass anything, a tax cut, a tax hike, nothing. Well, we have the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017 that has the sunset provisions that are going to raise our taxes significantly in 2026. The tax rates for trusts are already miserable. Julie is very intelligently shifting money at death. And as she said, it's really important to get this stuff done while you are still kicking into a trust that typically has a high tax rate. So we're going to try to see what we can do to radically reduce the tax rates and the tax burden on ourselves while we are alive, and our children, whether they have a special need or whether we don't. So we're mainly going to talk about Roth IRA conversions, Roth 401k conversions. I'm afraid we're not going to get to some of the advanced techniques that I love, but I will be providing a free resource, both hard copy and in digital form that does cover these issues in depth. So I'll get to as many issues as I can. I do like to take questions even in the middle, and I'm just not going to be able to cover everything that I'd hoped to, but I will do the best that I can. There's a little rasp in my throat. I apologize for that. I am, let's say I'm getting over a cold and not speaking quite as clearly as normal. So anyway, so along in 2020, effective January 1, 2020, comes the Secure Act. And it really should be the IRA Owners Insecure Act, because it's just absolutely miserable. And what the Secure Act says is it's subject to exception, we'll go over those, that all the money in the inherited IRA, 401k, 403b, SEP, KEO, etc., all that money has to come out within 10 years of the IRA owner's death. That is so miserable. And you might think, well, what's the difference? You know, the old rule, you could stretch it out over the beneficiary's life, which might be 30, 40 years, or maybe a grandchild, it might be 50 or 60 years, or they have to pay taxes sooner. But even the old way, they had to pay taxes, right? Well, it's not a coincidence that we've been stressing pay taxes later except the Roth. By the way, if you want to summarize my talk, pay taxes later except the Roth. And you can see hopefully on your screen the difference. So identical dollars, identical assumptions, identical interest rates, identical everything else. You die with $1 million under the old law, and if you follow the green line, that is where your child would be with the old law. But now, after the Secure Act, your child would be with the serrated line. In other words, the difference is between, let's say, 2 and 2.5 million that your child would have later in life versus your child running out of money. This is huge, huge. And very few people are talking about how miserable this is going to be, and how, particularly for those of us who have more of our money in our IRAs and 401ks, et cetera, than people who have money outside, this is really going to be harmful. Now, I'm going to tie in the planning for a child with a disability. And for my purposes, I'm going to define that child as somebody who is either currently or will be receiving SSI or SSDI. And now we have a new regulation that ties in the IRS treatment with the Social Security Administration treatment. But let's assume that you have a child that does qualify and is receiving either SSI or SSDI. In my case, my daughter is receiving SSDI. And to be honest, I kind of didn't really care that much whether she was going to get a couple bucks a month. I did care about the medical benefits, but I really cared about, when I die, that my IRA could be treated in the green line that is stretched over her lifetime versus the black serrated line, which would be how it would be treated if she didn't qualify for SSI or SSDI and was not considered disabled or chronically ill in the eyes of the IRS. So this is critically important for those of us who do have a child with a disability, but I would also say it's important for any IRA owner. Now, there are some exceptions. The most important exception to the Secure Act income tax acceleration is our surviving spouse, and we can use the old law, meaning the spouse could roll it in, or we prefer trustee to trustee transfer into their own IRA, and I'm not going to spend more time on the old law. Again, one of the critical exceptions, and you have to qualify disabled or chronically ill. I'm not going to cover some of the other exceptions just because I don't have time today. But the critical part is the ability to defer that minimum required distribution of the inherited IRA or the inherited Roth IRA. Right now, you yourself or your spouse you might not have, well, you don't have a minimum required distribution of your Roth IRA, but when you die, your child will have a minimum required distribution of the inherited Roth IRA, which will be tax-free, but they'll still have to take that money. But what I want to do is I want that tax-free growth to, instead of being limited to 10 years, to be stretched out over the child's life. And it just makes all the difference. Now, Julie, I'm sure, has pounded into you, but I will repeat it. And by the way, I was listening to everything she said. I'm in total agreement with everything else. The only thing that I would add to make maybe the ABLE Act a little bit simpler to understand, it's kind of like a 529 plan. You put money in, you don't get a deduction, the money grows tax-free. You take it out for a qualifying use, it's a tax-free distribution. I love her combining the ABLE Act and the disability trust or the special needs trust. So, and I'm sure she emphasizes getting your kid qualified for SSI, SSDI, and you want to do that before you die. What Cindy and I had to do, we didn't know Julie at the time, and we didn't know another person who, Debbie McFadden, who is, let's say, joining our team, who has a specialty in that area of qualifying kids. We didn't know that. Cindy spent literally hundreds of hours. We eventually won our case on appeal. And I think Julie does, I think she does do that appeal work, which is really important to get that right. And we have a website now where we're working on the report. It's still in process. But anyway, you can read about some of the things we're talking about at disabledchildplanning.com. Again, disabledchildplanning.com. So let's talk about numbers for a minute. First of all, let's talk about the scope of the difference, and then we'll talk about some of the particulars. What I put in motion for our daughter, compared to, let's call it the status quo, if I had done nothing, I never did a Roth IRA conversion, I never did a special needs trust, I never had my daughter qualify for SSI or SSDI. In that situation, using some not too ridiculous assumptions, in today's dollars, our daughter, assuming that she was age 46 at our death, would be, her trajectory would be along that gray serrated line, basically running out of money. But because of what we did, and by the way, what I'm talking about isn't something that cost you money. In fact, Cindy and I are better off because what we did. But our daughter, in today's dollars, not in future dollars, is $1.9 million better off than if we had done nothing. This is the difference between her being totally financially secure versus the possibility of running out of money. And it has just been an enormous relief to myself and to my wife. You know, a lot of times I tend to be a quantitative guy and I think about numbers, and I sometimes don't think about the human element, which is, hey, our daughter's going to be okay. And if we hadn't done that stuff, our daughter might not have been okay. So we really want to get this right. I'm going to go into some of the details of what we did do and what the difference is. And you might say, hey, Jim, you know, that's fine. You know, if you have, you know, more than $1 million or, you know, you already have a big Roth IRA, et cetera. But gee, I'm not, you know, I don't have that kind of money. In fact, I basically have a $500,000 IRA, maybe some resources on top of that, Social Security. How are your strategies going to help my kid? Well, we've run the numbers. And if you do nothing, that is, you do not take any proactive measures, the trajectory using certain reasonable assumptions for your child will be in the gray serrated line. If, on the other hand, you do take advantage of some of the strategies that I'm recommending, that your child will be in the solid black line. meaning by the time your child would be out of money with the status quo, they'll still have $239,000. And by the way, that is in today's dollars, not in inflated dollars. So this is something that isn't just for people with a ton of money. In fact, one of the goals that Julie and Debbie McFadden and I have is not just to bring work into our office, but to educate people who might not even qualify to work with us or might not be a good fit to work with us. But we want to tell them, hey, there are these things that you can do out there and that it can just make a world of difference. So I referred earlier to the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017. And by the way, the estate taxes are also going to be cut back. Right now we have, what, a $11 million exclusion. That's 22 something or 23 something if you're married. Well, that's going to come back to 5 million plus inflation, or maybe 10 or 11 million if you are married. But let's concentrate on income taxes for a minute. And if you can see the line that says it's 2022 married filing jointly 178,000 to 340,000. That's in the 24% bracket, okay? Now let's look at the 2017 rates. If you look at those same numbers, that would be in the 33% bracket. So that is coming, again, unless Congress does something to either raise or lower the rates. But if nobody does anything, the rates are going to go up. And that, that's a big chunk of money, a 9% difference in your tax rate, even though nobody did anything in terms of changing income, et cetera. So we're going to get into the details of Roth IRA conversions, but the general idea with a Roth is you want to convert when taxes are as low as possible. If everything else stays the same, that is your work status, your retirement status, your minimum required distribution status, your social security status, et cetera, which of course it won't. But if everything is the same, our rates are lower now than they will be in 2026, and by a considerable amount. Now, traditionally, the best time to convert is after retirement. So when you were working, your income was way up here. Then after you retire, your income's way down here. Then after Social Security and minimum required distribution, a lot of times your income is way back up here. And ideally, you want to convert in those in-between years. Because typically that will be, for many people, if not most people, the lowest tax rates of their life. If they do retire, let's say at 66 or 67, they have a number of years of low income to make those Roth IRA conversions. But under the Secure Act, even with steady tax rates, even before the Secure Act, it made a lot of sense to do Roth conversions. But now it even makes more sense for people who are still working and people who are already retired and taking minimum required distributions and Social Security. So the scope of Roth IRA conversions, as it has grown in importance, and particularly if you have a child with a disability, and two, we're playing defense now. Before we were doing Roth IRA conversions, if you will, offensively. Oh, if you do this, this is going to be great for your family and, all the wonders, and we're going to get tax-free growth for the next 2 generations. And frankly, I've been doing that for over 20 years. But now it's more defense. The Secure Act is just going to murder us. And the high tax rates on our IRAs and our minimum required distribution, we're going to get slaughtered unless we are proactive. And one of the best things that most people can do, not everybody, of course, is a series of Roth IRA conversions. And by the way, I will tell you, I did this myself. This isn't me just talking. So our office had a devastating fire in 1998. And I didn't get reimbursed for the expenses until the following year. So my income, say in 97 was high. My income in 98 was low. My income the following year was high. So that was, by the way, the first year you could make a Roth conversion. And I thought, I want to make a big Roth conversion. my wife, and she's a smart cookie. She's a software engineer with a master's degree from Carnegie Mellon University. She does not like paying taxes. And she said, yeah, prove it. Prove to me that we should, and at the time, between the two of us, we had a $249,000 traditional IRA and 401k. She said, you prove it on an Excel spreadsheet, because they didn't have all the fancy software they have today, that this is going to be a good thing. So we did. We developed our own Excel spreadsheet, and the numbers showed to convert everything. By the way, the other lesson we learned is never put your office above a pizza shop, because it was an electrical fire. But anyway, we converted the whole thing. And we continued pouring money into Roth IRAs, including the backdoor Roth IRA, which I'd love to talk about even more. By the way, in some situations, you could put $30,000 or $40,000 in a backdoor Roth IRA. You're probably thinking, 77,000. But anyway, we maxed out on that. We maxed out on our Roth 401ks ever since 2006, when it was gone. So why will our family be 1.9, specifically Erica, our daughter, who's now 27, why will she be $1.9 million better off in today's dollars using some pretty reasonable assumptions? Number one, and this was critical, and we just did it relatively recently, we got Erica qualified for SSDI. I cannot express how important it is to qualify for SSI or SSDI for your child with a disability. That's going to be critical. Julie does a lot of terrific things for people who might not qualify, but for me, what one of my big things is getting that stretch inherited IRA, or better yet, stretch inherited Roth IRA over the life expectancy of our child with a disability. So we got her qualified. We did do the Roth conversions and the Roth contributions. And we did that regularly. We did that big Roth conversion back in '98, and we got our estate planning right. It's still not completely done. In fact, we are, even though we have I think a terrific law firm in Pittsburgh, and our estate attorneys are sharp as a whip, they're not specialists. Julie and her firm are. We did exactly what my wife wanted to do, which is we hired Julie and we got some great insights. We're still not completely done. But anyway.
Jim, that's the smartest thing you said so far. You did exactly what your wife told you to do.
Okay.
Just joking with you.
No, it's not a joke, But by the way, let's pick up on that point, because not everybody does, Julie. In fact, a lot of people are going to say, Jim doesn't really know. Maybe that's Jim's opinion about Roth IRAs, and I happen to have a different opinion. Well, if you can't tell by now, I'm a proselytizer, and I wanted to get the word out about Roth IRA conversions, and this is even before talking about a child with a disability. So I wanted to prove it to the world. So I wrote it up and got it published in a peer review article, the AICPA's journal, the tax advisor. Again, I love peer review because we had these number crunching, nitpicking CPAs who wanted to tear my head off, but they actually agreed with the analysis. We won Article of the Year. I spoke all over the country. We wrote 3 editions of Retire Secure. I wrote a dedicated book on Roth IRA conversions. I have a new book, which, by the way, is part of your bonuses. So everybody stick around to the end. I'm not sure how long the end is going to be, but I'm going to try to get through as much material as I can. I wrote a book, which is our latest and greatest by far, called Retire Secure for Professors. And you're saying, hey, I'm not a professor. Just ignore the chapters that are specifically for professors that deal with TIAA, and just kind of replace professor with IRA owner. And there's a couple really good, I believe, chapters on Roth IRA conversions, inflation and Roth, etc. Things that are more in depth than I have time to do today. I was featured in Forbes magazine, 2019. We had 175,000 hits. Now we have a special report. We're not quite done with it, but at disabledchildplanning.com. I used to have a radio show. I had top experts, Ed Scott, Bob Keebler, Natalie Schott, many more. They were all advocates of Roth IRA conversions. Our office started running the numbers. And again, same methodology as the peer review article. And this is going to sound a little arrogant, and please don't take this the wrong way. The reason I went all that was not to brag, maybe a little, but the reason I wanted to do that is this isn't just my opinion. This is a matter of math. You say, hey, Barbra Streisand is my favorite singer. And I say, well, I like Whitney Houston. We could argue till, we're both blue in the face, and there's nobody that's going to be able to prove who is the better singer, right? There is no objective criteria. Maybe you can do albums sold, but there's going to be somebody who has an argument with that. So with Roth IRA conversions, it's not a matter of opinion. There is no such thing as an IRA expert who doesn't believe in Roth. Now, does that mean that you should do a Roth? Not necessarily. Does it mean that you should do or not do a Roth this year? And does it mean how much you should do? No. But my point is, and I really don't mean to sound arrogant, but it's not a matter of opinion. And you can have your own assumptions. Oh, Jim, I don't think taxes are going to go up. I think taxes are going to go down. Fine, let's run the numbers with that. Jim, you use 6%. Oh, we're never going to get 6% over. By the way, I'm not going to be measuring just for your life now, particularly if you have a child with a disability. I'm going to be measuring this over the life of the child, because that's going to be one of our primary concerns. It is numbers. It is, well, it's a little bit beyond arithmetic. And they have all this wonderful software today. By the way, we still use Excel because there are certain things that you just can't use that software. And sometimes we actually plug in the old 1040 and we see what we get. Okay, so let's go to the essence of a Roth IRA conversion. All right.
Jim, before you get we just had one come through. I converted 300,000 from tax deferred to a Roth IRA, paid the large tax, and now this year have also had Social Security reduced due to income related monthly adjustment assessment.
Right. So that's part of the deal. If you make a Roth IRA conversion, you should know some of the downsides. You're going to potentially have a higher tax on your Social Security. The thing that comes up even more often is your Medicare Part B. All of a sudden, you're in a higher bracket and you're paying additional costs for Medicare Part B. So you're not only sometimes paying just the tax on the conversion, but you're sometimes boosting your tax rate up. And what I would say, I don't know, obviously, the details of the gentleman's situation, but if I had to guess, and by the way, I tend to not do big whopper conversions like 300,000 a year. I tend to do smaller ones, but we've done multi-million-dollar Roth conversions when the numbers made sense. But if I had to guess, and I was to run the numbers, and let's just keep it simple. Let's not optimize it. Let's just keep it simple. Example number one, status quo. He never made a Roth IRA conversion, and he runs it. And let's not even assume that he has a child with a disability. Let's just say he has a child that doesn't have a disability. We run it for 10 years after he and his wife are gone. Example number two, same thing, except we do the $300,000 Roth conversion. And to be fair, we have to take the money that we paid to make the Roth IRA conversion out of the after-tax dollars, which I assume he used to pay for the Roth IRA conversion. Now, let's run that for the same period, all right? My guess is he will be, and his kids will be substantially better off by doing that Roth conversion. And remember when I said that the $500,000 IRA person was going to be $239,000 better off. That was with a $500,000 Roth conversion. So if he did a $300,000, now of course this isn't the right way to look at it, but I'm guessing easily his kids could be better off, particularly if they have if one of them has a disability, by at least $100,000, probably more. And if he lives for a while, I'm kind of assuming that in my assumptions, which I didn't have time to go through, that $500,000 was towards the end of their life. If he is younger, yes, he has to pay some Social Security, tax on Social Security, and yes, he probably, if he's 66, is going to bump up his tax on Medicare Part B, but his kids will he'll have lower minimum required distributions for his lifetime, and if he's married, for his wife. So I would not feel bad that you got a little bit of a surprise. Ideally, you run the numbers, you optimize it. Who knows? Maybe you'd have been better off doing $100,000 a year for 3 years. I don't know. I don't know the details, and I'm not going to have time to go through them. But I would not be kicking yourself until you actually knew that that you really hurt yourself. And I don't mean to be unsympathetic, but the additional tax you paid on your Social Security is not going to make me lose sleep. All right. What would make me lose sleep is if you're not proactive, you do nothing, and then your kid runs out of money, particularly if they have a disability. Okay.
Another question, Jim. Another question. You're saying to have the money go to a special needs trust, not to the special needs person directly, right? If so, would we have to be concerned about high trust taxes?
Yes, we do. But if it's a Roth IRA, remember it's tax-free. So you could have 100% tax, and if it's if the money is a Roth IRA, and we're talking about the minimum required distribution of the inherited Roth IRA, it comes out income tax-free, which is one of the reasons why the numbers, which is frankly included in the numbers that I have run.
Okay. Jim, I would also add to that, for those that if we're not dealing with an IRA or Roth IRA situation, remember that it is true that some trusts that are non-grantor trusts get higher tax rates quicker, but you always can go around that by making distributions out to the beneficiary. So first of all, it's not an issue with every type of special needs trust. Second of all, even if it is, there's a way to plan around that. Again, I agree with Jim, it's one of the reasons to do a Roth. So then you don't even have that issue. But even with other assets, it does require more planning, but you can, make distributions out that would avoid that extra taxation.
Yeah, Julie's really good. Don't take this the wrong way, but for an attorney on some of these math things, and she's referring to the income distribution deduction. So let's just say, for discussion's sake, the amount of income in the trust pushes the trust into a high tax bracket. And I'm just going to use $50,000 as an example. So we distribute $50,000 to the beneficiary. The trust tax return looks like $50,000 worth of income, less $50,000 of income distribution. Taxable income for the trust is zero, so it doesn't matter what the trust tax rates are. And then the income is in effect transferred to the beneficiary, who might be in a low bracket or might have some expenses that offset that. Again, I would love to take questions till, by the way, how would you like to listen to me for 8 hours on Roth IRA conversions? That's what I do, a lot of workshops, and I used to do even more for financial advisors, for CPAs, for attorneys, and some have to listen to me drone on for 8 hours. I always want to talk longer. It's killing me how much I'm not going to have time to do, but that's part of the deal. Anyway, I want to go on to the essence of the Roth IRA conversion, because this will help you understand the math. And what you're doing is you're taking a tax deferred account, whether it's an IRA or 401k or 403B or a SEP or a KEO, money that nobody has yet paid taxes on. You are then saying abracadabra, you fill out the appropriate forms, now you're a Roth IRA. Let's say that you do it with Schwab or Fidelity or wherever you're holding your money. And then they send you a 1099. And now you have to pay income taxes on that. Well, and typically I'm going to recommend that you pay taxes on that, not from the IRA itself, but for money that you have outside your IRA, which is sometimes problematic, but that's going to be part of our assumption. So what you get is a Roth IRA that's going to go income tax free, no minimum required distributions for you and your wife. Then after you die, income distributions for 10 years to your beneficiaries, or if your beneficiary is a special needs trust, over their entire life, tax free. So here's the key. Here's the simple math. Let's forget about the Roth for a minute. You have $100,000 in an IRA. You have $24,000 outside an IRA. So it gives you $124,000 total. Let's just keep it simple. That's all you have. All right. And then you say, hey, I'm going to make a Roth IRA conversion. So you take the $24,000 that you have of after-tax dollars, you use that to pay the tax on the Roth IRA conversion. So measured in total dollars, you have $124,000 if you do nothing. What if you make the Roth? Well, now you have $100,000. And if you're measuring in total dollars, that's right. But I don't really care about total dollars. What I care about is purchasing power. If you go to the grocery store, if you want to buy something, how much value does $100,000 in an IRA and $24,000 outside an IRA, how much stuff can you go out and buy? Well, you're going to have to pay tax on cashing in the IRA. Let's keep it simple. The tax is $24,000. So you only have $100,000 in after-tax dollars to go out and buy goods and services. Well, what if you do a Roth conversion and you wanted to say, how much do I have in today's purchasing power? You would still have $100,000. So the point is that on day one, measured in purchasing power, you have, it's a break even. And see, this is what a lot of the calculators on the web don't get right, because they measure in total dollars, not in purchasing power. But can you see how measuring in purchasing power is really the most effective strategy? Because you are now comparing what you can really go out and buy. And then you might be saying, well, gee, Jim, big deal. You're asking me to write a check for $24,000 just to break even. Sorry, Jim, that doesn't do it for me. It doesn't do it for me either. So what if, and we ran the numbers, and again, using the same methodology as our peer-reviewed analysis, what if we do a series of Roth IRA conversions between retirement and age 72 versus if we did nothing? And again, the difference, forget your kids, it's over $1 million to you. All right. And then if we do this to, let's say you live till 85, and we look at the difference over your child, it can make just an enormous difference measured in purchasing power. All right. Now, because it was the name of the program, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about inflation and Roth IRA conversions. And here's the thing that I haven't seen anybody read it, say this yet. I've never seen an analysis of how does inflation, we're obviously in inflationary times, how does that impact Roth IRA conversions? And in isolation, it doesn't. I'll tell you how it does, but let's get to the main point. All right, so remember my old example was we had $100,000 in an IRA, we had $24,000 outside an IRA. Let's assume 2 years inflation of 10% each, 10% inflation each year. So now let's measure in, let's call it today's dollars before the inflation. So the 24,000 goes to 19.2. The traditional IRA goes from 100,000 to 80. Let's do the analysis again. We do the Roth conversion, we pay the tax with after-tax dollars, we end up with purchasing power of 80,000. If we do the Roth, if we do nothing, we're still at 80,000. So inflation in and of itself is not a factor for or against it. Now, to be fair, there will be tax bracket changes. Actually, tax brackets go down sometimes with inflation, which might make it less favorable. On the other hand, you might have a IRMA, that is Medicare Part B, which it might make it more favorable. So one of the things is, should you convert in inflationary times? I hate to sound like a record, but you run the numbers, and the answer is the answer the attorneys love to give to everything is it depends. And it's a matter of math. Of course, we can't predict the future, but we can do the best we can, run the numbers, and have you do everything we can. I want to check the time. I guess we're doing okay. Is that right? So I'll tell you what, before I go to the next topic, that concept that right here, bear with me, this concept is really important. So do we have any questions about this concept or anything else I've spoken about so far? Okay, seeing none, I will move on then. By the way, don't worry, I have plenty of materials, so don't worry about me running out of material. So typically, for most people, we either say, and it's up to the client, we say, hey, do we want to optimize your situation and not worry about the kids? So I don't have very many, but occasionally clients say, hey, I paid for their braces, I paid for their college. If there's anything left over, that's great, but I sure don't want to go through consternation and pay taxes so they can be better off. Fine. People don't say that with kids with a disability because, and for those of you who have a child with a disability, you probably have the same worry that my wife and I have, which is what's going to happen to our kid after we die. So, or even if you don't, most people say, hey, no, I'm still interested in providing for my child. So we typically optimize for you and 10 years, which is how long you can have tax-free distributions of the inherited Roth IRA after the Roth IRA owner dies. But if you have a child with a disability or a chronic illness, or somebody who's qualified for SSI or SSDI, and that child can stretch or defer those tax-free distributions over their entire lives, well, now the math becomes different. All right, so it's possible you'll be a little bit worse off. In my wife's case, we're actually going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars better off. Now, to be fair, I did this big conversion in '98. That's more than 20 years ago. And even if you did a big one now, you might not have a 40 or 50 year life expectancy. So some of the amounts that your kid will be better off might not be as high as the 1.9 million for my daughter, because we acted even before we even knew that she had a chronic illness or disability. But we planned for the life of the child. Everybody stick around, because the resources that we're going to give you with the for free with some of the Roth techniques and special disability planning, and it is my best work. I've done 9 best-selling books in the Wall Street Journal 36 times, and we just kind of went all in on this book called Retire Secure for Professors, which will later be repurposed for other groups. But anyway.
Here in the chat, how can you use life insurance proceeds to help your special needs person?
Well, nobody likes to hear about life insurance, so I didn't talk about life insurance. But very frankly, life insurance is a very important, it's one of the tools that we as parents have for special needs children. Very frankly, that is part of my and my wife's plan, which means no matter what happens to the investments, no matter what happens to our spending, we run out of money, whatever it is, she's going to have, and depending on when we die, and et cetera, but she'll have maybe a couple $1 million in life insurance. So that is important. The only thing that I would add is everybody wants to do term insurance because it's a lot cheaper. And I'm not a big fan. Well, I better watch it because there's going to be some financial guys and insurance guys. I'll just say that I tend to prefer low-cost permanent insurance, where I typically like big death benefits and lower premiums. Other people like cash value. There isn't a right or wrong, but life insurance is, here's the truth, in my opinion, about planning, retirement planning, estate planning, and particularly if you have a child with a special need, or even if you don't. There isn't one strategy that's going to cover everything. You can't go to Julie and say, hey, Julie, draft me a special needs trust, and then we'll be done. As Julie said, hey, no, there's some social implications. What's going to happen to that child? Where's that child going to go? Does that child have needs now that we can cover? One of the things I loved about Julie's firm is that she doesn't have just a bunch of attorneys who are cranking out documents. She has a bunch of social workers. They're helping people. How wonderful is that? So there isn't one solution. I can't say, oh, do Roth IRA conversions and then you're done. And I can't say, oh, get your kid qualified for SSI and SSDI, and then you're done. Or get your estate planning documents right, and then you're done. Or get a bunch of life insurance, and then you're done. Probably you should do all of them. So I'm a little bit animated on that, but people tend to want the silver bullet. And a lot of times, sometimes the advertisement, and I'll take the blame for 3 of my potential professions, CPA, estate attorney, and financial advisor. Sometimes they do webinars implying or even saying, we have the silver bullet. And, sometimes, now Julie would never do this in 100 years, but there's estate attorneys that say, avoid probate, that's the key. No, that's not the key. Is it a good thing? Yeah. Is it the key? No. Or I sometimes might be a little guilty. Oh, let's do a whole series of Roth IRA conversions. Let's maximize for you and your heirs. It's going to be great. Well, yeah, it's true, but it's not the only thing. So life insurance is often a very good thing. And by the way, life insurance, if you think about it, can be a little bit like a Roth IRA conversion. So let's say that you have nothing but IRAs, okay? You take out some money from your IRA. Let's just say 1 or 2% of the value. Let's keep it simple. You have $1 million in your IRA. You have no money to pay the tax on it. You take out $10,000 and you pay the tax. You use that $10,000 to buy a life insurance policy. Now think about it. The life insurance policy is growing income tax free, and assuming it's done right, if Julie's your attorney, it will, that money's not going to be in your estate. So isn't that like a Roth IRA conversion where you're paying the tax up front and it grows tax-free, and it's in a way even better than a Roth because the proceeds are outside of your estate. So I'm not going to come here and try to sell life insurance, but I'll just tell you it is a valuable tool.
And Jim, before you go on, I just want to give out two places where I've used that before. So I don't sell life insurance, but often I have clients who come in and maybe they have 3 children, and one of those children has a disability, and they're really concerned about, do they give everything out equally to all the kids or fairly, depending on how we use those words. And sometimes what happens is they might make their will or their trust say, everything I have goes equally to all 3 of my children. But then they buy a life insurance policy for that child who has special needs, where maybe they didn't have to help that person through college or whatever, so that that person has that extra sum of money. So I've used life insurance in the past in order to have an estate that goes out equally, but still ensure that that child who has a special needs is going to have enough money to live off of. I've also done it in situations where, quite honestly, again, let's assume there's 3 kids and we divide it all up and there's not enough money. That child who has a special needs, maybe they're looking at going into a personal care home when mom and dad die. And if we think about the cost of that over a lifetime, maybe that's $1 million. And so sometimes I've supplemented an estate with life insurance in order to ensure that we have a proper amount of money for the care that that child is or adult at this point in time is going to need. So Jim, just, again, I don't sell it and I'm not getting into the types of insurance, but I think conceptually, it gives us a bag of money. I also love what you're talking about, which is, it again is a tax-free conversion, whether we take money out of an IRA to buy it. And in Pennsylvania, life insurance is tax-free. It's inheritance tax-free. It's income tax-free. It's like the only thing that is. So always a good benefit for Pennsylvania residents anyways.
Yeah, and by the way, for whatever it's worth, I actually present to Pennsylvania Bar Institute. It's that is broadcast all over the state. I've been doing it every year for a lot of years. Actually, since COVID, I haven't, but I'll go back to it. It's pretty rare when you have an estate attorney that understands this kind of thing as well as Julie. It really doesn't happen. Julie's idea, okay, we have 3 kids, it's going to be equal. We need to provide for the 3rd kid. And there isn't enough money. We can't cut up the pie any differently. We're going to make a bigger pie. And by the way, making a bigger pie is a very cool thing, because then my big thing is make the biggest pie and then figure out how to divide it up. And Roth IRA conversions, life insurance, ABLE Act, or for a child, or if you don't have a child with a disability, a 529 plan, all these are making a bigger pie. And basically what you're doing here, when it really comes down to it, is normally that, ultimately we're going to have to split up all the assets that we have and the taxes on the distributions between our heirs and the IRS. And what all these techniques are really doing is giving a much smaller slice to the IRS. So we're making a bigger pie for everybody in the family, whether it's a special needs child or somebody who isn't. And by the way, one of the interesting things that I'm not going to have time to talk about, but it's a strategy that I call who gets what, is sometimes it might make sense, depending on tax bracket, is you leave money, IRA money and Roth IRA money to the special needs beneficiary who can stretch that inherited IRA or inherited Roth IRA over their lifetime, where leaving, let's say, a regular IRA to a child that's going to have to pay tax on it in 10 years, that is an example of making a bigger pie. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky to try to equalize it, or sometimes parents don't say, hey, kid with special needs has special needs. And if they end up with 60% of the estate and the other 2 kids get 20 each, we're okay with that. So anyway, I agree with Julie's analysis. And some people just don't like life insurance. Fine. There's a lot of things you can do without life insurance. I'll just say I personally did use it. And if clients are open to it, which frankly, they usually aren't, it can be a recommendation. All right. Couple advanced Roth IRA conversion techniques. I'm probably not going to get to all these. In fact, I know I'm not, but I just want to make you aware of them. And if you are interested, you can take a look at the book that's going to be part of one of your bonuses. We'll get you a digital copy quickly, and then probably towards the end of the year, we'll actually send you a hard copy. Anybody that signs up for it, whether you're a client, a prospect, even a financial advisor or an attorney yourself, because frankly, one of Julie's and mine and Debbie's goals in this, of course, it'd be nice for us to get business. And I'm going to give you an offer that if you're interested, you could potentially do business with me. But we really want to move the theory and the planning, particularly for a child with a disability, because again, this isn't just numbers. This is huge difference in the quality of life for our child. Backdoor Roth IRA conversions are very cool. And my clicker is not working, but I'll just do this from memory. Maybe Eric can move it along. There we go. We have something called separating the coffee from the cream. And that is when you have after-tax dollars inside your IRA or your 401k. They might have got there because you made a non-deductible IRA contribution. You might have been working and you were limited as to how much you could deduct putting into your 401k, but maybe because there was a match or because you got, even if you didn't get a tax deduction, you got tax deferred growth. It's not unusual for us to have clients with $50,000 or even $100,000 of after-tax dollars inside their IRA and 401k. Most advisors lose it and they lose that advantage. If you do this right, I'm not going to have time to go through the mechanics, you can actually do a Roth IRA conversion of the traditional IRA or 401k. And sometimes when you run the numbers out far enough, that, which by the way, doesn't cost you a dime, it can be a difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Hardly anybody does it. We've been doing it for years. I do a lot of work with Westinghouse engineers, and a lot of those guys, few women, but mainly guys, had this type of configuration where they might have had $1 million or $2 million in their IRA, maybe $50,000 or $100,000 of after-tax dollars inside their IRA, and we were able to separate the coffee from the cream, do the Roth IRA conversion of that $100,000 or $50,000 for free, and then leave the rest alone. Not going to have time for the details. It is in the book. The other one, this is a big one, especially if you have a child with a disability. All right. Did you know that you can make a Roth IRA, I'm sorry, a Roth 401k conversion after you're dead? So let's say that you're a big shot, you're in a very high tax bracket, or even you're a medium shot, and you're still in a higher tax bracket, certainly than your beneficiary, whether it's a special needs child or whether it isn't. You can actually, and we do this, people love doing this. We get, and you have to jump through a few hoops, but we sometimes can take the IRA, throw it into a 401k, we make the Roth 401k conversion, and then when we die, the child can, I'm sorry, we don't do the conversion until after death. Then the child does the conversion after you're gone, but they do it at their rate. And for regular, or that is a child without a disability, we're talking 10 years of tax-free growth. But for a child with a disability, and we can get tax-free distributions over their life expectancy at their tax rates, man, that alone might be hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I hardly ever see anybody do this. I've been doing it since '98. Bob, and I'm not the only guy. Bob Keebler, to be fair, he's been doing it too. In fact, one time we both came out with practically the same article at the same time. It's just because we both figured, oh, this is a cool thing to do. Then there's other things. You sometimes combine Roth and charitable contributions. I'm not going to get into QCDs. I don't have time for that. Let's see. I have not very much time. Okay, I think what I should do is talk about the free bonuses. Let me take the liberty of making a recommendation if you like some of what you've heard and you are looking for some potential help in this area. Well, one of the things you could do is you could figure it out on your own. And I'm trying to give you as much information as I can. I have not held back one technique that I know. My only limitation has been time. And I'm going to offer you literally the best book I've ever written on a lot of these techniques. And for the do-it-yourselfer, that would be great. If you have an existing advisor, even if they've never given you this advice, you can continue using that advisor, say, hey, here's some chapters from Jim's book, or here's some things that he said. Does this make sense to you? And that might be fine. And the other option is you could potentially get our help working with us. And the way we're doing that right now, I don't think we're always going to do this. I actually anticipate getting so busy that I don't even know if I will have time to devote as much time as I do now. But you can potentially get our help. That would start with an hour of my time. So let me tell you who this consultation would not be for. It would not be for a dyed-in-the-wool do-it-yourself. All right. And I hate to limit who I can work with. But if, I'm really looking for people who have $1 million or more. It's in my model, it's not economical for me to work with people that have much less than $1 million. Sometimes we make exceptions, but ultimately that's what we are looking for. And really we're doing it in an assets under management situation. We did have a service where we just did it on a fee-for-service basis. And frankly, we were charging $20,000, and the CPAs and estate attorneys were complaining, hey, we're doing too much work for that fee. And in your case, you have Julie as your estate attorney. I wouldn't be your estate attorney even if you begged me, because who's kidding whom? I'm a professional. You don't bite the hand that feeds you. Julie was kind enough to expose her clients, prospects, some of her fellow professionals to me. I'm certainly not going to take any of that business. And the other thing is, she's better at it than we are. We're talking about special needs. If you say, hey, Jim, what I really care about is portfolio. I noticed that that I've been kind of following my own way of doing it, and I'm comparing it to my financial advisor, and I'm 0.2% better off than him, and that's really the critical issue for me. Do I like our money managers? And by the way, we don't manage the money. We actually have somebody, I'm like Clint Eastwood, a man's got to know his limitations. I don't manage the money. I have several choices, but I have some very good money managers doing that. Our office likes to do the strategic part, the Roth IRA conversion, the spending, the life insurance, whatever options or whatever seems to be appropriate. Sometimes we do the estate plan. Again, I would defer to Julie on that. On the other hand, we can't help ourselves. If we see something, we would bring that up. But if all you care about is portfolio performance, we're not going to be a good fit. I'm interested in saving tens, hundreds of thousands, sometimes over $1 million, not because we're 0.2% better in terms of portfolio performance. I'm much more interested in some of the strategies that we use that I think is the way that we provide value. And very frankly, if we don't think we can provide value to you, let's say you're in a situation, Roths don't make sense, gifts don't make sense, your estate plan is fine, you're a do-it-yourself Vanguard guy, or even you're happy with your advisor, I'll be honest with you. I think we're going to get so much business, including Julie, by the way, that we don't have to take clients that we're not going to provide a lot of value to. If you are the type of person, though, that says, oh, okay, strategy is really important. I like some of the things that we've heard. I like the idea of some number crunchers figuring out Roth IRA conversions, and it can make a enormous difference for my family, and that Jim himself has a special needs kid, then this consultation could be different. What makes us different? We're number crunching CPAs. That's how I got my start. We're estate attorneys. Our big thing is IRAs. If you have a business and you don't have IRAs, we're not really, that's not a good fit for us. We're a better fit for people who have significant IRAs. A lot of our clients have $1 million, $2 million, $3 million in an IRA, a house, a Honda, and not much else. And if you want this, let's say, complete plan. So we've put together this, what we think is the dream team, Julie on the legal. And if you are interested in that, you would contact us. Again, it would start with a conversation with me. And if I don't think I can add value, there is a form. You can do one of two things. You can call us at 800-387-1129. Again, 800-387-1129 to set up a consultation, or you can go to the website that is in front of you, disabledchildplanning.com/PA Elder Council. That website is not complete, but at least we put up a form that is, if you don't want to call, if in the event that you were interested in talking with me. Again, 800-387-1129 or disabledchildplanning.com/PA Elder Council. Now, I did promise a number of free bonuses, and I genuinely mean this. I want everybody to take advantage of these bonuses, even if you never want to work with me, even if you never want to work with Julie, you're just looking for some great information to help your family. I am truly, and I really mean this, I am delighted for people to look at our information, even for the do-it-yourselfers, and who act on it, and I never get a nickel. In fact, since I'm going to be offering you a hard copy bonus, I'm going to be out a couple bucks. But again, that's fine. When it comes out, this one's already out, I'm sorry. The IRA and Retirement Plan Guides to Beating the New Death Tax. That's about the Secure Act, all right? It's done, it was out, it was a bestseller. It's a few years old, but it's still very, very relevant. And by the way, even there's a section on children with a disability, talking about the ability to stretch the inherited IRA and Roth IRA over their lifetime. So you want to get that bonus. Here's a bigger one, and you can get this one, and it could come to you tomorrow. Again, I mentioned the best book I've ever written is Retire Secure for Professors. We will repurpose that later on for other audiences. But again, if you just ignore the TIA stuff and ignore the stuff about professors and just think IRA owners, it's the best stuff I've had. It will also talk about in depth some of the advanced Roth IRA conversion techniques that I've talked about. We also have a section for special needs children. And we will actually we'll send you the digital version. We're not 100% done. We're getting there. We'll send you the digital version. And then when the hard copy comes out, which will be probably mid-December, I wanted it to be mid-October, but that's the way these things are. We will send you a hard copy. Obviously, you're going to have to give us your hard copy address, but the digital version, all we need is your email. So we also, by the way, I did write a book on Social Security, and to oversimplify, I'm usually a fan of the person in the couple who has the stronger earnings record to wait till 70. And the thing that's different about my book is I talk about the synergy about holding off on Social Security and Roth IRA conversions. I have not seen that in other areas. And again, we have a section of the website that is set up for you to get your bonuses and or consultation with me. That can be at disabledchildplanning.com/PA Elder Council. Again, disabledchildplanning.com/PA Elder Council. I'm laughing because I have more material if time allows, but I think I infringed by 7 minutes already. Julie, I'll leave it up to you whether you want me to take a few more questions or whether we ought to call it a webinar and hope that everybody got a lot of value.
So people are asking to put the link in the chat. And Kyle, I think you direct messaged it to me. So
Oh, yep. Oops.
if you put it in the chat, and understand when you get on there, as Jim has talked about, you'll see a picture that says nothing here. But if you go down, first up in the top, it says Get Report. You can click on that, or down in the right-hand corner, there's a place that you can put in your information to get that report. So, and it could be how it's seen on everybody's screen is sometimes different, whether it's a phone or whether it's, a laptop computer. So,
Yeah, but
go ahead.
I'm going to say, so on that website, and we're having some technical problems ourselves, but on that website, ultimately, I'm interested in, assuming you want these bonuses, I want to give you all those bonuses. Obviously, I need your hard copy address for the book, your email for all the digital bonuses, and also, if you do have a child with a disability, we will send you both the short version of the report, which, by the way, Julie is a co-author on. She just knocked it out of the park. And on the longer version, which is there now, Julie's, oh no, Julie is on that too. I think, and just some great material. And Debbie McFadden, who's a third party, her material is not up, but I would highly encourage you, take advantage of these free resources, whether you're interested in talking with me and or Julie or not.
I will appreciate everybody getting on. I think this is one of those things that you have to collect information about, and understanding that our firm works with people who have any amount of money for planning for a child who has special needs. And we can help come up with a plan for you. And Jim is very much, a specialist, and I'm so excited to have met him, because I often get myself into situations where I think somebody should do a Roth conversion, and I don't have the system in place to be able to walk them through that. And very few people do at the level that Jim does it, which takes into all kinds of things into consideration. So, making sure that we have that.
Well, thank
How
you.
do you see any questions? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
I was going to say thank you, Joey, but you're really head and shoulders, not just as a specialist in the, let's say, elder law or a parent with a child with a disability, but even just some of your suggestions go far beyond what a drafting attorney does. So for you to come out and say, hey, yeah, I've recommended life insurance, that's not the kind of advice that you get at a typical law firm. And the fact that you have social workers, that was one of the reasons why my wife was very attracted to work with your firm. And you gave us, some great resources that we didn't know about. And my state attorneys, I think, are really sharp and really bright, but they're not specialists.
Well, thank you, everybody. And know that we are here to assist you in whatever it is that you're needing to make sure that your planning for your child who has a disability is done correctly, completely, and that we really maximize the amount of money that's left to that person.